Hello everybody and welcome back to the 6th episode of the Job and Ruben podcast.
Job and Ruben. Very nice. But yes, we're here. We have a very special episode, one that was heavily teased in the last episode, and it do be
The
Blackberry.
rise and fall of Blackberry.
Exactly.
This week's been a very interesting week, very crammed week, because how many exams have we had this week?
Many. Multiple, and one coming up very soon too.
Tomorrow.
Obviously. Yeah,
we've got a proper mock tomorrow, and we should be revising, but are we? No, it's 5 o'clock, and instead of doing maths, we're doing a podcast.
Oh, we have far more important things to deal with.
Obviously,
like you people.
Yeah, we value you over our own education. Think about that.
Exactly.
But on a new note, how has your week been this week? Been better than the last couple?
Exhausting. I've kind of been on the grind, you know. I've been doing some pretty productive stuff. Slowly trudging through my website. I much to your pleasure, I switched back to Windows temporarily. Just to because my Linux was a bit unstable and it was a bit of a pain to sort out. But thankfully, it reminded me of all the reasons why I hate Windows, so I'll probably be switching back very soon. What about you?
Well, I've had a very busy week this week because on Saturday I hosted a quiz fundraiser for my World Scout Jamboree.
Oh, yes, of course.
And
How'd it go?
Well, let's play a game. I say higher or lower.
Alright.
Pick a number and I'll say higher or lower.
Well,
How much we raised?
you're selling... Were there samosas there as well?
There was samosas there, but that was included in the ticket price. And there was a raffle and bar, and I sold some sweets.
370.
Higher.
Right. 390.
A little bit higher.
400.
Higher.
410.
Higher.
Wild guess, 500.
It was 500. A stupid amount of money.
Damn, I've got to get myself some quiz now.
It was so profitable.
So is it all going towards World Scout Jamboree?
All going to my World Scout Jamboree to help me get to South Korea because it's so expensive, but it will be a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Oh yeah, of course.
But on that note, we need to segue straight into our episode of the rise and fall of Blackberry. So I think before we start, we need to learn a little bit about the history, where did they come from, and what they're doing now.
This is well before you and ours time, so gonna have to try and lean on you a bit.
So in the year of Big Brother, March the 7th, 1984, in Waterloo, Canada. So quite a nice place. I like
Weird,
Canada.
but okay. Don't we all?
It was founded, Blackberry, or as it was back then, Research in Motion. So it was founded by Mike Lazardis, sorry if I'm pronouncing any names wrong, and Doug Friedgen, and
some robot names.
Yeah, and they founded Research in Motion, which was Blackberry's original name.
Right.
Fun fact: so it was always called Research in Motion, and when they kind of were going on the downside, and the CEO, who isn't them two, he changed the name to their most successful line of phones, which was the Blackberry. So their whole brand changed around the product.
Oh.
So they
Weird.
rebranded their name from Research in Motion to Blackberry based on their phone.
Like if Microsoft shouldn't suddenly change their name to Windows 95. A bit weird, but we'll get to the decline later.
So they originally just started out as a bit of a software brand, and they were going on, and their first big break was in 1999 when their first device was a pager capable of email.
Oh, love pagers.
So,
I don't know if you've ever seen a pager.
Yeah, don't they use them in hospitals?
Do they? I don't know. Pages are just like the quintessential retro tech. Literally like something you strap around your belt and it just beeps whenever your number gets a phone call. And they're so beautiful. I actually love them.
Yeah.
That's a really good business idea though.
And
For the 80s at least.
And they got some funding from a big telephone company, which helped them get into the industry.
Of course, yeah.
And by 2002, they released their first smartphone, and this was the Blackberry 5810.
Very catchy name.
5810. I don't know what order they called it in, but those are the numbers. And they grew in popularity because I think they were really good. By 2002, they had 1 million people using their phones. 1 million.
Pretty exponential.
Especially back then as well, when not many people had phones because tech wasn't available to everyone.
2002.
2002.
Oh, that's crazy. Like, we just come out of, like, the 90s, so at that point, only, like, a small fraction of people actually use the internet. Obviously, there was, like, a massive explosion in the 90s, so this really, it probably helped boost popularity as well.
So, and in 2007, they jumped from having 1 million to 9 million users. That's more than a million a year, which is mad growth. But originally, they didn't think it would be for everyone. That wasn't their market audience. Their market audience was for investment bankers and for the work, a bit like IBM.
Ah, yes.
They were focused for the big money people, bankers, investment bankers, businessmen, as the ideal phone for them.
Just never saw it coming.
But soon after, it became the phone everyone needed, the necessity, the best thing that could have came.
Yeah, like the iPhone before the iPhone.
Also, here's some more facts and figures, because you can never have enough facts and figures. By 2007, it had a 30% share in the market of all phones.
Ooh, yeah.
At its peak, though, in 2010, it held a 41% in the market.
Ridiculous.
Which is that about how much does Apple have now?
Oh, it's like, I know in Europe, all of the top 5 best-selling smartphones are Apple, so it's got to be Apple, if not above Apple levels.
But at the time, it was above Apple. It was leading. It was doing very well. But
crazy to think that iPhone, like, this was pre-iPhone. The iPhone seems so omnipresent now, but we'll get to the iPhone surely. Soon enough.
But it didn't view its competitors as threats. But the fun thing is, when the iPhone came and the iPhone 4 came, it didn't kill it off immediately. It just really it held on for a couple of years, and then it just kind of fell to the dust because it just couldn't keep up.
Was it a rapid thing, or was it just like slowly declining?
I think it went slow, nothing. But when you look at it in years, by 2013, so 3 years later after its peak, it dropped from having a 41% shares to 5.9%, which is not good. But at its peak, guess how many phones they sold at its peak?
Got to be like 50,000.
50 million phones.
50 million. 50. What was I thinking? 50,000. That's more than the population of the UK, or at least in 2018, more than the population of the UK of just pure phones. It's crazy to think about the scale of that.
That might only be the US, so it could have been more. So I think in 2010, they were passed by Apple for the second time, but they kept there. So they were passed by Apple in 2000 they were passed by Apple when the iPhone came out, and so they passed Apple, and then Apple went down a bit, but BlackBerry was still up there, and it was still being really competitive. But then the iPhone came. Was it the iPhone 4 came after the iPhone?
Did it jump straight to iPhone 4?
I'm not sure. But when the next iPhone came along, for the second time, it just surpassed BlackBerry, and it kept there, and they couldn't do anything. They just failed to realise because
why would anybody want anything else but a BlackBerry? Of course, the little keyboard, it will never get old.
Because the keyboard was really innovative, but when Steve
Yeah, it was still Steve Jobs in the iPhone.
Cool. Well, Steve Jobs came along with the whole thing of you could have a whole touch screen and it gives you so much room and you just tap. Who
Exactly.
needs
That's a real touchscreen, by the way, not some like stylus or any of the weird pointy stuff.
Hey,
I mean,
you've got your stylus right here. It's your finger, and it really caught on. So I think we now should segue swiftly on to why people like them. So, do you know much about why people like them?
I can definitely see the appeal. It's the clicky buttons, isn't it? It's about the tactile feel. It's like, oh, I don't really know how satisfying it would be, considering, I mean, how big was a Blackberry? Like...
Yeah, big.
Yeah, tiny. So I don't really know how satisfying the keyboard would actually be.
But it was like a mechanical keyboard. If any of you gamers out there, you really like that responsive.
Gamers, yeah.
And I think that's what definitely helped bring it in.
Again, you've seen the business side there, businessmen with the nice clickiness, all of that made you feel like you're doing stuff.
Yeah. So I interviewed some people because we as professional podcasters should do market research and ask people on their opinions, because think about it, in 2010 that was the big hit. Everyone had a BlackBerry.
At that point I was 3, so I have never seen a BlackBerry in my life, unfortunately, and I don't know about you.
I did have a BlackBerry for a little while because year 7 I had one for a couple of weeks because I had my phone and I broke it somehow. Or something happened. I can't remember what happened when I broke my phones, and I'm really good with my phones now. They don't break, they just fizzle out. They just don't get as good as the other ones, so you upgrade to keep up with everything because of the camera quality and battery.
Yeah,
but when mine broke, I had a BlackBerry, and it was so cool because my addiction came to Texas Hold'em, the poker, because I had a little poker game. And I was
you could play that on BlackBerry.
You could play it on a BlackBerry, and I was like, yes, my favourite thing.
This right here, this is why people like BlackBerry.
not because of BBM, not because of the keyboards, because of Texas Hold'em.
Oh yeah.
But no, when I asked people, they said the first thing they said was the keyboard. We could talk for days on the keyboard. It was one of the first phones to have a keyboard. Before then, everyone just had the 1, 2, 3, and you had to click a button 3 times to get the letters. And think how frustrating that is, especially for time consumption, and even when and that's how text language evolved, because
who can be asked? Who can be asked to do all this weird stuff with one button and click it all the times?
Because to think about it, if you wanted to click U, I don't know the exact numbers, but you could possibly be clicking it 9 times. So actually, it was way more efficient to click it 3 times. But that's half the reason text language evolved. Obviously, you had the cap on the amount of characters you could send in a text as well.
Yeah.
But the keyboard meant that you could just type it out like you could use on a computer, and it was bringing this computer into your phone, and it was so surreal, and just brought on because everyone liked it.
Just made sense. It's you think about, why didn't they have this idea before? Of course,
magical, just magical, and it was so much faster. And the next reason, it was reliable, really reliable. I think again, I was asking them, and there was it compares to the Apple phone because it's reliable, it works. And there wasn't a need to use any other phone because it just there, it worked, and it was really convenient for everyone. Do you have any points on it?
Not really. I mean, I can definitely see the appeal, yeah. I mean, if I was, some ancient person living back in those godforsaken years of 2010, I can definitely see why.
The music from 2010 was banging, though. Sorry.
No, just no. But yeah. The question is, what happened? How'd they fall off? Was there no comeback? Was there no, some kind of attempt to grasp on, innovate?
Well, I will talk about that later, but I'm going to carry on with what people liked about them so much. When I asked my parents about it, I was like, you had a BlackBerry phone, why? And currently, Dad was really happy with his, I think he had a Nokia, or...
As most people do.
Or an Android one, but he was really happy with that. And the only reason he got a BlackBerry is because that's what work was giving them. So it must have been so good that the work environment wanted to give them phones.
Exactly.
And he said one of the reasons he really enjoyed BlackBerry is because it was one of the first phones that had push email. We take it for granted that when we get an email, it would go ping, you've got an email, whereas previous phones didn't. You had to check it, but the BlackBerry was the first one that it would ping you.
The notification, it's such a basic thing.
And push notifications became the thing from BlackBerry, and it's definitely so innovative.
Would you say it's their biggest legacy that they've left?
Yeah, definitely, because imagine walking down the street and you didn't notice when you had like a notification. Like imagine you had to check it.
Chaos.
And you had to set a timer every 15 minutes to check your notification. Then it would push it. It was like whoa. But I don't think we've scratched the surface, because another really big aspect is BBM. Do you know what BBM is?
No. So too many acronyms in computer science.
So BBM is the BlackBerry messaging. Is BlackBerry messaging.
Yeah.
And imagine that it being the WhatsApp of BlackBerry.
Yeah.
It kind of added to the inclusivity club, like the executive club, like, hey, I've got a BlackBerry. It's like, you know when all the iPhones have the little blue bubble, which make them feel special. I'm in the blue bubble club. But it was like the WhatsApp, because it was the fact that you could have back and forth messaging, and it was really good because you could have back and forth messaging like WhatsApp, and it was really innovative of its time. And people would be going around like, oh, what's your BBM pin? What's your number? What's your BBM profile thing?
A dark time, yeah.
And that's how people would message. It was just really good.
Yeah. Tapped into the social aspect, which, of course, with all these walled gardens that most tech companies have nowadays, that was like a walled garden even back in 2010.
So I think we should talk about why it went downhill.
Yes.
So we mentioned that the iPhone took over it. But you might have noticed there's a bit of lag time by a couple of years, and partly the reason that they didn't go straight away is because the iPhone was expensive. It was £400 on release, was it?
I think so.
$399, which was a lot of money. People didn't want to spend that much money on a phone. Back
this
then.
Experimental thing that hadn't been tried yet. I mean, with like failing at that level, surely they like did make some attempt to grasp on for dear life. Was there no pushback? Were there no new Blackberries? Was there no comeback or anything?
So the Blackberry Storm was the first touch one they had.
A better name, at least.
Blackberry Storm, which is horrible. Blunt way of putting it. It was buggy, it was laggy, and it was just not a user-friendly experience. And because they were so far behind, it was just too late.
Was there a reason for why it was so buggy, or was it just...
I think they just didn't catch on the bandwagon fast enough. It just fizzled, which is a shame because their highest selling BlackBerry Bold, what a name, from 2008 was a banger.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best selling phones of the time. I think they also missed out on a couple of really key features. They missed out on camera.
Yeah.
So their camera quality wasn't up there. And it was only till really late when everyone was starting to include, when Apple was really starting to include cameras and getting good camera quality, but it was too late and they just couldn't keep up. And even when they did, it wasn't the best, and they didn't value it over. They didn't see what people really wanted.
It's that same smuggery that caused them to decline in the first place. Like, why would Apple? We're BlackBerry, We're too good for what Apple's doing. We'll keep doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
It's making the money.
But it wasn't. So in 2016, TLC bought them.
Yeah.
The Chinese company bought them in 2016. And at that point, they were starting to fizzle out. They weren't producing many phones. But they did try to have one big comeback in 2018. And it was the BlackBerry Key 2. And
was there a Key 1?
No, BlackBerry Key 2. 2018. There might have been a Key 1 actually. But they're
these weird tech names, they never make sense, do they?
But their big comeback was the BlackBerry Key 2 in 2018.
Right.
And Linus Tech Tips has a video on it, and he said it was horrible.
For lack of it, yeah.
And he was like, I don't want to discourage you from using it, because it was and he had it as his daily driver for 4 weeks.
So hold on, where'd they go wrong then? Because this is Blackberry we're talking about. Like,
they went back to their origins and they put a physical keyboard on it.
ouch.
Which I think they thought maybe people would like the physical keyboard again for a bit of nostalgia, a bit of this, bit of that. But in a world where phones are having like 98% screen.
I mean, look, Marvel can lean on nostalgia, but when you're making a phone, it's not viable, is it?
But like, whereas some phones are having 90% screen, they were having only 55% screen because half of it was taken up by a physical keyboard, which meant actually screen space was really valuable, because when you tried to type in an emoji, you had to go onto the other screen. The screen was touch screen, but you had a physical keyboard as well. So when you were using time and typing emojis, it just got really small. Especially if you were trying to watch YouTube. Imagine having like only being able to watch a movie on half your screen.
This isn't the early 2000s anymore. This is 2018. Most people are using their phones to watch movies. It's broadly a content consumption device.
Yeah.
So how would you rather watch a movie like this? Like this?
Yeah.
It just just wasn't viable.
So unfortunately, started this year in January the 4th, 2022. After they said they're discontinuing. So I think they said in fun fact, they said they were going to have another big relaunch of another phone in 2021, but that never came. They said they were going to release it and then they never did. But I think they just realised they're going to cut their losses. But at one point, they had like zero shares in the market, and the thing, because there's only 1 million people bought them, and it was bad.
Yeah,
but they've discontinued since the 4th of January 2022, and
a sad tale.
So
indeed.
now no longer will they be supported. Even the OS has been shut down and everything. So it's sad.
Sad. It's sad with a lot of the stuff. It's like all these old tech companies like IBM, they're a shadow of their former self. Motorola. You know Motorola, the company I talked about that made the Dynatac. Mm-hmm. They tried to make a flip phone, like one of the screens that like bend. The Samsung one. That was a complete flop. It's just... But they just can't compete, can they?
I think they failed to adapt fast enough. And they went from having 40% to 5% to having 0% in years because they couldn't adapt. They tried to revive and they just still got it wrong. But they just died. But you still got to give them credit for having some of the four founding things that we call a phone now.
Do you think it was a noble death? Do you think they could have actually made a comeback somehow?
No. If you looked at the Key 2, if that's what they thought people wanted, no.
No. People want big screen, they want big buttons, they want to be able to press those buttons. And if the app takes too long to load, then they have a virus. Like, people don't want these weird keyboards. It's just, yeah.
Maybe in a couple, but they've been shut down now for good, so it's a shame, but hey, it's what it is.
This is it.
So thank you ever so much for listening to this amazing podcast about Blackberry.
Just brilliant podcast. I actually learned a lot. As I say, this whole research stuff, we kind of just go away and do our own thing. So yeah, it's really helped me get a greater appreciation for what Blackberry was, because before I just saw it as the funny phones with the keyboard. Yeah. So thank you very much. And thank you very much to all of you for sitting through us talking for what is now 26 minutes. Probably going to be a bit shorter when we actually upload this though.
Goodbye.
It's the Joe and Ruben Show!